Alright you guys, back here with another video today, and today we're talking about natural light. I love natural light because it breaks up the monotonous part of my days when I'm doing shoots. You know, when you get to a certain level, or you get to a certain point where you're doing a lot of photography, videography, you know, you get stuck in the same routine. You know, you're always using these flashes or these strobes or this artificial light. You gotta charge this V-mount battery, you gotta set this to 5500 Kelvin, you gotta get the light set up this way, you gotta get the color set up this way. And, you know, with natural light, you just have the ability to just plug and play. I threw my camera on a tripod, hit record, and that's pretty much it. And it's really nice to be able to forget about those other external things at times and just go back to the basic elements of just recording. And I think that a lot of people just need to do that these days, because a lot of people are starting to do the same thing, get the same quality type of work, use the same lights, same settings, same everything. And there's no originality, there's no flavor left in the game. So using natural light just helps you re-break that back up and try different things and just put a little bit of variety into your workflow. So I really like natural light because I have the ability to overall just expose my image very well and just see how it just affects my background, how it affects the other elements around me. Because the thing with natural light is it's not artificial. You can't control it, and that's the thing that scares people the most. That's something that they can't control. It's something that's not just easily accessible by the touch of a button or a flip of a switch. So because of that, people do have issues, you know, actually shaping or using light because they don't truly know how to shape light or what lighting is actually doing to their image. You know, when you're shaping natural light and you're using the sun, which is the freest source of light that you'll ever have, you know, challenge you otherwise, but this is going to be the freest source and the biggest source that we have, you know, just widely available for everybody. The biggest challenge with that is that people don't know how to expose themselves properly as well as exposing the background, because generally you can use artificial lights to set the background exposure as well as set the exposure of your subject. So when you're outside and you're setting natural light, the thing I like to think about is, how am I going to place my light? What direction is it going to be in? Am I going to be facing my subject, which is going to result in a lower contrasted image, or am I going to silhouette my subject, in which my subject is in between myself and my light source? So my camera's in the front, I'm right here, sun's in the back side, but anywhere that's not in between or in front of my subject. Once I decide that, then I know about my shooting style. So today I chose to come outside because it was an overcast day, and because it was an overcast day, the sun wasn't going to be as harsh, so I wouldn't have as much hard light, which is basically a small light in relation to my subject. It becomes more of a soft box, more of a softer source of light, which is bigger in relation to my subject, because that spread of light is going to be a lot more even. It's going to be less direction than it was with just the harsh sun beaming on me, and essentially having my sun just being bricked up. So trying to hold it together because I just said my sun was bricked up, but I digress. Anyways, since I decided I'm not going to backlit my subject today, I'm going to make sure that I'm pretty much somewhat in between the light source and the camera. I want to make sure that everything is exposed properly in my image. So I made sure that the background up here, I want to make sure that that's not overexposed and basically losing detail. Because if it's overexposed and losing detail, that's basically going to tell me that I'm not going to be able to see anything in that image. If I try to make any edits, brighten that, or decrease the intensity of that light coming in the highlights, there's not going to be anything there. It's just going to be blotches, and it's just going to make my image look a little bit more amateurish and low quality. The reason that you don't want to do that is because it just makes you realize that you don't know how to actually light your subject. You don't know how to actually light a scene. And the most important thing when you're outdoors and you have lights that you can't control is you want to set your exposure for the things you can't control, because in the fact of the matter, in a studio session or in an environment where you can set everything up, you have control of everything. So first you want to set your exposure for your sky, and then afterwards you want to see what you can do in terms of getting your skin dialed and exposed properly. You might honestly not be able to get it exposed to the levels you want it to because of the fact that you're trying to retain as much detail in the image in the bright areas as well as the shadows, but that's the challenge of natural light, and you want to just make sure that you can have it as, you know, optimized and as evenly spread as possible throughout your image without blowing out one section, just to account and save in, you know, the skin tones itself. So if you're backlit, one thing I would recommend is taking yourself a gray card or a white card. Maybe the white card because it's a little bit, because it's a lot brighter, and it'll match almost the intensity of the sun behind you. Get your white card out, set your exposure levels based on your camera manufacturer settings. If you're in S-Log3, you know, bright white 90% reflectivity point is 60%. If you don't know what that means, basically if you're shooting S-Log, shoot your zebras to 61% and pull up your white card. If you see zebras on there, you know that you're exposed properly. And you just generally have to just keep your exposure around that level if you're shooting backlit, because different subjects are going to have different skin tone values, so you're not going to be able to consistently get an accurate reading if you read for skin tones. But if you set for that 61 cents, you'll know that that's the brightest stuff in your image, which is going to almost be the sun, and then everything else will just be silhouette accordingly. And stuff will be underexposed skin-wise, but if you don't do that, then you'll wind up overexposing the image and, like I said, creating that amateurish look. You know, there are times you can't overexpose your image. Like, speaking of, you know, when you're shooting directly into the sun, or you're silhouetting a subject and the sun's directly behind them, it's kind of really hard to not overexpose the image at that point, because you're putting your light metering directly at the sun and just putting the most intense bright amount of levels of IRE into your camera. So times like that, it is fine to overexpose your image, and honestly a lot of cinematographers and movie directors do overexpose the images at time when necessary, because it does help bring in that level of authenticity. Because if you look at an image and you're looking directly at the sun, in real life it's going to be super bright, you can't see anything. So they're not going to always just stick to that rule and not overexpose stuff, because it's going to lose authenticity. And you should keep that in mind, to know that you can overexpose the image at times. Like, don't ever let anybody tell you you can't always overexpose the image, because that's just not true. They're just going with conditioned information that they received, and they don't actually know or see how the light is shaped. So keep that in mind. You know, all of this stuff is pretty much subjective at the end of the day. You know, whatever you think feels the most cinematic, as long as you're staying within the boundaries of, you know, what is deemed cinematic, will be acceptable. And then if you have to go outside of those boundaries, that's also acceptable, because that's what cinematography is. That's what, you know, being a creative is. It's going against the norm, going outside of what is traditionally deemed as socially acceptable, and doing something creatively that stands out, that makes you go, wow, you know, I really did that. It makes the other person go, wow, I really want to replicate that. So these are all things to keep in mind on my TED Talk for today. But essentially, you know, go outside, use natural light, use your different environments to create a different background, create a different setting. It's something that you don't normally do. You know, get from behind that computer desk, get from behind that green screen, get from behind that, you know, small area in the bathroom where you're recording. You know, try something different. You know, get outside, get some fresh air. It'll help with the creative process and the creative juices, because you're not sticking to those societal norms that you put on for yourself. You're not sticking to that conditional workflow that you have every time you press record on the screen. And you give yourself a chance to, you know, experiment and see how things look different. You know, what things you can incorporate later into that regimen that you continuously use. And you just have different ways of, you know, going about different workflows. If you set yourself up and, you know, do your camera work or artistic work or any other type of creative field in a different setting, in a different environment. So I highly recommend that. You know, it's going to be sunny most areas in the U.S. if you live in the U.S. If you live in other places, like, I have people that watch this in India, so shout out to India. If you got sun in India this weekend, or if you don't have sun in India, it's going to be daylight outside. I guarantee it. Like, I'm 99.9% sure it's going to be daylight at some point this weekend. 99.9% sure. So go outside, you know, just record something, you know, put something out there, do something different, you know, get away from that strobe, that artificial light, get away from that same light that every single person on YouTube is using, and just do something different and have fun. And while you're having fun, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this video, because it needs you. This video needs you, and Rhodanus needs you. And this mosquito that's sucking my blood outside needs you as well. I think he subscribed. And if you subscribe and is also taking my blood, you should subscribe as well. And that's all I have for you guys today, so peace.